When a distinguished 68-year-old man, dressed in simple clothes, visits an exclusive country club, he is judged, mocked, and ultimately escorted off the premises. Hours later, he returns with a fleet of vehicles, revealing secrets that will transform lives in ways no one could have predicted. The morning sun cast golden rays across the immaculate gardens of Oasis Valley Country Club, where perfectly manicured lawns stretched like emerald carpets between flowering magnolias and elegant water features. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and expensive perfume through the air as members in designer clothing lounged by the Olympic-sized pool or chatted over mimosas on the terrace. Into this picture of exclusive luxury stepped William Johnson, a 68-year-old black man with dark skin weathered by time and wisdom. His snow-white hair contrasted sharply with his complexion, and despite his simple attire, worn jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and comfortable sneakers, he carried himself with quiet dignity. His observant eyes took in the surroundings with genuine interest, noting each detail of the club's architecture and layout. The moment William entered the main courtyard, conversations faltered. Wealthy patrons glanced up from their newspapers and cocktails, their expressions shifting from surprise to disapproval. A waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes nearly stumbled when he spotted the elderly black man, clearly unprepared for such a sight at Oasis Valley. "May I help you?" asked a young hostess, her voice tinged with suspicious confusion as she hurried to intercept William. Her eyes darted nervously to the security guard positioned nearby. "Just looking around," William replied with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Beautiful place you have here." The hostess glanced at his simple clothing, then at his dark hands, the skin thicker and more textured with age. "Sir, this is a private club. Members only." Her tone suggested she had already determined he couldn't possibly belong. William nodded pleasantly. "I understand. I'm considering membership, actually. Thought I'd have a look first." Behind him, a couple at a nearby table exchanged glances and snickered. "Membership?" the woman whispered too loudly. "Does he know how much that costs?" William heard, but didn't react. Instead, he continued his unhurried exploration, moving toward the clubhouse with measured steps. His presence created a ripple effect, mothers pulling children closer, men in golf attire watching with narrowed eyes, staff members exchanging perplexed glances. No one stopped him directly, but the weight of their stares pressed against his back like physical pressure. A white gentleman in his 40s with a tennis racket tucked under his arm blocked William's path. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Lost something around here, old-timer?" he asked, emphasizing the last two words while staring pointedly at William's dark skin. William's expression remained unchanged, his voice steady. "Not lost at all. Just exploring." "Well, explore somewhere else," the man said, dropping all pretense of politeness. "This is a private club." "So I've been told," William replied, stepping around him and continuing toward the terrace restaurant. As he passed the pool area, a white woman clutched her designer purse tighter to her chest, eyes widening as though she feared robbery from this elderly man who walked with the slight stiffness that comes with age. Children pointed, and a lifeguard moved to a more vigilant position, hand hovering near his walkie-talkie. William absorbed it all, his face revealing nothing. Behind the dignified facade, however, his mind worked like the finely tuned instrument it had been for decades, observing, categorizing, remembering. Every face, every slight, every whispered comment cataloged with photographic precision. This had been his survival strategy for nearly 7 decades as a black man in America, and now it served a different purpose. He approached the restaurant where the maitre d', a thin man with slicked back hair, deliberately avoided eye contact. William stood patiently at the podium while the host seated 3 white couples who had arrived after him. Only after 10 full minutes did the maitre d' finally acknowledge his presence. "Can I help you?" he asked with thinly veiled annoyance. "I'd like a table for one, please," William said. The maitre d' looked him up and down. "Do you have a reservation?" "I wasn't aware I needed one for lunch on a weekday." "We're quite busy today," the man replied, gesturing to several empty tables. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the sandwich shop down the road." William's eyes, sharp and intelligent, didn't miss the insult, but his expression remained pleasant. "I think I'll be comfortable right here," he said. "Unless there's another reason you can't seat me." The implied challenge hung in the air. The maitre d' reluctantly grabbed a menu. "Follow me." As William was led to the worst table in the restaurant, next to the kitchen doors, he noticed several members taking photos with their phones, whispering and pointing. His heart beat steady and slow. The first act of his carefully orchestrated plan was unfolding exactly as he had anticipated. William sat at his table, back straight despite the stiffness in his aging joints. The server approached with visible reluctance, placing a water glass on his table with such force that droplets splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth. "What can I get you?" the young man asked without making eye contact. "I'll have the club sandwich and iced tea, please," William replied with deliberate politeness. "ID, please," the server demanded. "Excuse me?" "For the tea." "We need to verify age for all beverages," the server said, though William had just watched an elderly white couple being served wine without question. "It's iced tea," William pointed out calmly. "It's policy," the server insisted, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. William reached for his wallet, producing his driver's license. The server examined it with exaggerated scrutiny, then walked away without another word. At the next table, a group of middle-aged white members stared openly at William, their conversation hushed but audible. "Must be lost," one man said. "Or working for someone here," another replied. "In those clothes?" "Doubtful," a woman added with a dismissive sniff. William took a small notebook from his pocket and began writing. To casual observers, he might have been jotting down thoughts or a grocery list, but his notes were far more deliberate. Names overheard, descriptions of staff members, times of specific interactions. His memory was exceptional, but documentation would prove crucial later. His meal arrived, the bread slightly stale, the meat arranged haphazardly. William said nothing, eating methodically while continuing his observations. When he requested the bill, the server slapped it down without ceremony. William noticed the charge was nearly double what the menu had listed. Again, he made a note without comment. After leaving a generous tip, William made his way toward the golf course. The April sunshine warmed his back as he walked slowly along the cart path, admiring the rolling hills of perfect grass, the sparkling ponds, and the swaying willows. To an untrained eye, he might have appeared to be merely enjoying the scenery, but his gaze was calculating, assessing. A golf cart approached rapidly from behind, coming to an abrupt stop beside him. Two security guards jumped out, both wearing expressions of practiced intimidation. "Sir, this area is for golfers only," the taller guard said, placing himself directly in William's path. "I'm just taking a walk," William replied. "Beautiful course you have here." "You need to be either playing or accompanied by a member," the second guard interjected, moving to William's other side, effectively boxing him in. "I'm considering membership," William explained. "I wanted to see what the club has to offer." The guards exchanged looks of disbelief. "Membership? Here?" The first guard laughed openly. "Sir, do you have any idea what membership costs at Oasis Valley?" "I believe I can manage it," William said simply. The second guard reached for William's arm. "With all due respect, sir, I think the senior center across town might be more your speed. This club isn't really suitable for someone like you." William didn't miss the implication. The guard's eyes lingered on his dark skin. "Someone like me," he echoed, his tone revealing nothing. "You know what I mean," the guard said, tightening his grip on William's arm. "Elderly folks on fixed incomes." "I see," William said, looking pointedly at the man's hand until he released his grip. "And is there a policy against potential members touring the facilities?" "You need to be escorted by management," the first guard stated firmly. "And management needs to be expecting you," which they weren't. "Let's go have a chat with the manager then," William suggested. The guards flanked him closely as they walked back toward the clubhouse, maintaining proximity as if he might attempt to flee, an absurd precaution for a 68-year-old man walking with the measured pace of someone minding arthritic knees. As they passed other members, conversations ceased. Mothers pulled their children closer, and several people took out their phones, recording the spectacle of an elderly black man being escorted by security. The weight of judgment and prejudice was palpable in the air, but William's expression remained serene. Each reaction, each whisper, each barely concealed look of disdain only strengthened his resolve. The club manager's office exuded wealth and tradition. Dark mahogany paneling covered the walls, adorned with photographs of previous club presidents, all white men in formal attire. Golf trophies gleamed from glass cabinets, and a massive desk dominated the room, positioned to intimidate visitors. Behind this imposing desk sat Gerald Parker, the club manager, a middle-aged white man with thinning hair and the permanent tan of someone who spent weekends on luxury yachts. He looked up with annoyance as the security guards escorted William into his office. "Mr. Parker, we found this gentleman wandering on the golf course," the taller guard announced. "Says he's interested in membership." Parker's expression shifted from irritation to poorly concealed amusement. He gestured for William to sit in the smaller chair across from his desk. "Thank you, gentlemen. I'll handle this." The guards nodded and positioned themselves by the door, clearly intending to stay. Parker leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "So, you're interested in membership at Oasis Valley?" His tone made it clear he found the very idea preposterous. "Yes, I am," William replied calmly. "Your facilities are impressive." "They are indeed," Parker agreed with a smug smile. "They're also exclusive. Very exclusive." "I understand exclusivity," William said. "I'm prepared to meet whatever requirements you have for new members." Parker's smile tightened. "Our memberships start at $250,000 for the initial fee, with annual dues of $75,000. That doesn't include minimum monthly spending requirements or special assessments." He named these figures loudly, as if the sums alone would send William retreating in embarrassment. When William showed no reaction, Parker's confidence faltered slightly. "That's within my budget," William stated simply. Parker's eyebrows rose. "Is that so? And you are—" "William Johnson. And what do you do, Mr. Johnson? That would put Oasis Valley within your budget?" The skepticism in his voice was unmistakable. "I'm retired now," William answered. Parker gave a derisive chuckle. "Retired? From what exactly?" "Business," William said, his response deliberately vague. Parker's patience visibly thinned. "Mr. Johnson, Oasis Valley isn't just about having money. We have a specific membership profile, established families, certain social circles, people who share common interests and backgrounds." "I see," William replied. "And what backgrounds would those be?" Parker shifted uncomfortably, aware of the trap in William's simple question. "People who would fit in with our current membership, who share our values and traditions." "And you've determined I wouldn't fit in based on—" William let the question hang in the air, forcing Parker to fill the silence. "Look," Parker said, leaning forward, "let's not waste each other's time. Even if you somehow had the finances, which, frankly, I doubt, there's a lengthy application process. Candidates need sponsors from existing members, committee approval, background checks." William reached for his phone. "I'd like to begin that process. Perhaps you could provide me with the details of the application requirements." Parker's face flushed. "What are you doing? Are you recording this?" "Taking notes," William explained. "No photography or recording on club premises without authorization," Parker snapped, signaling to one of the guards. "Give me that phone." The guard stepped forward, snatching the device from William's hand. "Hey, that's private property," William protested, his voice firm but controlled. The guard scrolled through William's phone. "He's been taking pictures of the club." "I most certainly have not," William countered. "Spying on our facilities, photographing our members without consent. These are serious violations," Parker declared, standing up. "I think it's time you left the premises." "On what grounds?" William asked, remaining seated. "Trespassing, unauthorized recording, disturbing the peace." Parker ticked off the invented offenses on his fingers. "Frankly, a man of your age should know better than to create these kinds of problems for himself." The condescension in his tone was unmistakable. The implication that William's age and race made him both senile and suspicious. "I've created no problems," William stated calmly. "I've been treated with disrespect since the moment I arrived, simply because I'm black and elderly." Parker's face darkened. "That's ridiculous. This has nothing to do with race or age. This is about conduct and club policy." "Then I'd like to see those policies in writing," William countered. Parker picked up his phone. "I'm calling the police. We don't need this kind of trouble here." The police arrived with surprising speed. 2 white officers in crisp uniforms responding to what Parker had described as a suspicious individual refusing to leave private property. They entered the manager's office with hands resting near their weapons, immediately establishing a confrontational presence. "What seems to be the problem here?" the older officer asked, directing his question to Parker rather than William. "This gentleman has been wandering our grounds without authorization, taking photographs and refusing to leave when asked," Parker explained, his tone suggesting he was dealing with a dangerous criminal rather than an elderly man in a chair. "That's not accurate," William interjected calmly. "I was exploring the club as a potential member. I took no photographs. I was never asked to leave until just now." The younger officer turned to William. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." William reached slowly for his wallet, conscious of how his movements might be misinterpreted. "My phone was confiscated," he said, nodding toward the guard still holding his device. "I'd like it returned." The officer ignored his request. "ID, please." William handed over his driver's license. The officer studied it, then radioed in the information for a background check. The atmosphere in the room grew increasingly tense. "Do you have any weapons on you, Mr. Johnson?" the older officer asked. "No, I do not," William replied, maintaining his composure despite the absurdity of the question. "Stand up, please, sir. I need to pat you down." William complied, rising slowly with the slight stiffness of his arthritic knees. The officer conducted a thorough pat-down that seemed excessive given the circumstances. William noticed Parker watching with thinly veiled satisfaction. "Mr. Parker says you refused to leave when asked," the younger officer stated. "Private establishments have the right to refuse service and request that individuals leave their premises." "I was never asked to leave until moments before you arrived," William clarified, "and the request came only after I expressed interest in applying for membership and began taking notes about the process." "He was photographing members without consent," the guard interjected, still scrolling through William's phone. "And the facilities." "May I see?" the older officer asked, taking the phone. After examining it briefly, he frowned. "There are no photos of this club or its members on this device." Parker's confidence wavered momentarily before he regained his composure. "He must have deleted them. Or perhaps he's using some kind of cloud service that uploads and deletes automatically." The officer looked skeptical but handed the phone to his partner rather than returning it to William. "Regardless, Mr. Johnson, the club manager has asked you to leave. I suggest you comply." "I understand," William said with dignity, "but I would like it noted that I'm being asked to leave because of discriminatory practices. I've been treated differently from white visitors from the moment I arrived." "That's a serious accusation," the officer replied, his tone hardening. "Do you have evidence of this discrimination?" William met his gaze steadily. "The evidence is in how I've been treated today, in how I'm being treated right now." Parker scoffed. "Oh, please. Playing the race card when you get caught breaking rules? Typical." The younger officer stepped forward. "Sir, we're going to escort you off the premises now. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to arrest you for trespassing." William stood tall despite his age, his dignity intact. "I'll leave, but this isn't over." "Is that a threat?" Parker demanded. "It's a statement of fact," William replied calmly. The officers flanked William as they led him through the clubhouse. Members stared openly, some taking videos with their phones, others whispering behind manicured hands. The walk of shame was clearly designed to humiliate him. But William kept his head high, his gaze forward, his pace unhurried despite the officers' attempts to rush him. At the club entrance, the younger officer returned William's phone. "I'd advise you not to return to these premises, Mr. Johnson. Next time might end with more than just an escort out. William took his phone, checked that nothing had been tampered with, and nodded once. "Thank you for your advice, officer." As the police car pulled away, William stood alone in the parking lot. To anyone watching from the clubhouse windows, he might have appeared defeated, an elderly black man humiliated and ejected from a space never meant for him. But those observers couldn't see the slight smile that touched his lips as he made a brief phone call. "It's exactly as we expected," he said into the phone. "Everything is in motion." William sat in a modest coffee shop several blocks from Oasis Valley, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug. The quiet hum of conversation and the scent of fresh pastries provided a stark contrast to the sterile luxury and hostility of the country club. Here, no one gave him a second glance, just another elderly gentleman enjoying an afternoon coffee. His phone buzzed with incoming messages, legal team confirmations, security arrangements, final preparations. Everything was proceeding according to plan. William scrolled through the updates with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent decades making critical decisions. Despite his simple attire and unassuming appearance, his eyes revealed a sharp intelligence that had built empires and broken barriers. A group of young professionals at the next table laughed loudly over some shared joke. William observed them briefly. Diverse in ethnicity, gender, age, sharing space without tension or prejudice. The contrast with his morning experience wasn't lost on him. His phone rang. The caller ID displayed Marcus Phillips. William answered immediately. "How did it go?" Marcus asked, his deep voice familiar and reassuring. "Precisely as anticipated," William replied. "They exceeded even our expectations. Full documentation secured. The issues with the police? Minor intimidation, nothing serious. They escorted me out as predicted." Marcus chuckled. "Bet they'll be surprised in a few hours." "That's the plan," William agreed. "Is everything ready on your end?" "All set. Legal team is standing by. Transportation arranged, media connection secured but holding until your signal." "Perfect." William took a sip of his coffee. "And what about the special request?" "Found her. Elaine Williams. 65 years old, worked cleaning services at Oasis Valley for 23 years. Never missed a day, never received a promotion. She remembers you, by the way. Says you used to carry golf bags there as a teenager." William smiled at the memory. "Good work, Marcus. Make sure she's ready for this evening." "Will do, boss. Car will be at your location in 2 hours." William ended the call and returned to his coffee. His mind drifted back 45 years, to his days as a young man working at Oasis Valley, carrying heavy golf bags for wealthy white members who never looked him in the eye, enduring their casual racism, their assumptions, their dismissal of his humanity, using their offhand comments about stocks and business deals to begin building his knowledge, studying by night, working by day, laying the foundation of what would become one of the country's largest technology companies. The irony wasn't lost on him. The same club that had once exploited his labor while treating him as invisible now rejected him as a potential member, despite his wealth and accomplishments. Some things had changed in America over the decades. Others remained stubbornly the same. William finished his coffee and opened a small leather notebook. Inside were meticulous notes about Oasis Valley, observations made during his visit, names of staff members and club officials, details of interactions. Though his memory was exceptional, the documentation would serve another purpose: evidence, accountability, transformation. His phone buzzed again. A text from his attorney. "Judge Wilson signed off on everything. We're good to go." William smiled, a brief, satisfied expression that revealed nothing of the complexity behind it. Judge Wilson. Another irony. The man's father had been a member at Oasis Valley decades ago, one of the worst offenders in terms of racist treatment of the staff. Now his son, having spent a career trying to distance himself from his father's legacy, was an unwitting participant in William's plan. Outside the coffee shop window, life continued its normal pace. People hurried by, absorbed in their own concerns, unaware that just blocks away, a quiet revolution was about to begin. William watched them, contemplating the ripple effects his actions would create. Beyond Oasis Valley, beyond this small community, perhaps beyond his own lifetime. At 68, William was acutely aware of his mortality. The cancer diagnosis last year had been definitive. 18 months, perhaps 2 years with aggressive treatment. Not enough time to change the world, but perhaps enough to change one small corner of it. To leave a legacy that mattered. He tucked the notebook into his pocket and checked his watch. His window of solitude was closing. Soon, the machinery he had set in motion would accelerate, and he would need to be ready to guide it, to ensure that what happened next served his larger purpose rather than mere revenge. A server approached to refill his coffee. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" "No, thank you," William replied with a genuine smile. "I have everything I need." The quiet before the storm settled around him like a comfortable blanket. William Johnson, once a golf caddy, now a technological innovator and billionaire, sat in peaceful contemplation of justice, long delayed, but finally within reach. His expression revealed nothing of the determination burning within. A lifetime of enduring discrimination and prejudice channeled into one perfectly executed plan. In a few hours, Oasis Valley Country Club would never be the same again. And neither, perhaps, would the countless other exclusive spaces that maintained invisible but impenetrable barriers against people who looked like him. While William enjoyed his momentary peace in the coffee shop, frantic activity unfolded across town. In the executive offices of Johnson Innovations, a team of lawyers, PR specialists, and security personnel coordinated the next phase of the operation with military precision. Marcus Phillips, Williams' chief of operations for 20 years, directed the effort from the center of a glass-walled conference room. At 52, Marcus carried himself with the confidence of someone who had helped build something revolutionary from the ground up. As Williams' first employee and most trusted advisor, he understood not just the plan, but the deeper motivation behind it. "The police report?" Marcus asked, looking up from his tablet. "Already obtained," replied Aisha Jackson, head legal counsel. "Contradicts itself in 3 places and includes thinly veiled racial language. Perfect for our purposes. Security team. 5 vehicles, 15 personnel, all documentation in order," confirmed the head of security, a former military officer who had joined the company after meeting William at a veterans event. "Media? On standby," the PR director reported. "They don't know details yet, just that there's a major story involving discrimination at Oasis Valley. We've tipped enough outlets to ensure coverage, but not so many that it leaks prematurely." Marcus nodded, scanning the room. "And the documentation of Williams' club tour?" A young tech specialist stepped forward. "All footage downloaded and secured. The microphone and camera worked perfectly. We have high-definition audio and video of every interaction, including with the police." "The pen camera captured everything?" Marcus confirmed. "Crystal clear. Mr. Johnson positioned himself perfectly in each conversation. We have irrefutable evidence of discrimination based on both race and age." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Williams' meticulous nature and strategic mind had been the backbone of their success for decades. This operation was no different, planned with the same attention to detail that had made Johnson Innovations a technology giant. "What about the paperwork for the club acquisition?" Marcus asked, turning to Michael Chen, their financial officer. "Final transfer executed this morning at 9 a.m., just before Mr. Johnson's visit," Chen confirmed. "Oasis Valley Country Club is now officially a subsidiary of Johnson Holdings. The previous owner's signature is still drying on the documents." "And they have no idea?" "None," Chen assured him. "The acquisition was handled through shell companies and intermediaries. As far as the management knows, they're still owned by the Whitfield Group." Marcus checked his watch. 2 hours until Phase 2 begins. "Any issues I should know about?" The team exchanged glances before Aisha spoke up. "There is one potential complication. Judge Reynolds has been asking questions about our sudden interest in private club regulations. He's a longtime Oasis Valley member and close friend of their board president." "Let him ask," Marcus replied confidently. "By the time he connects the dots, it'll be too late to stop anything." The meeting continued, with each department reporting readiness for the evening's events. Outside the conference room, employees went about their regular business, most unaware of the operation unfolding around them. Johnson Innovations had always maintained a separation between its business operations and Williams' personal projects. This particular project was classified at the highest level of confidentiality. In a quiet corner office, away from the main activity, an elderly black woman sat nervously smoothing her simple dress. Elaine Williams had spent most of her life cleaning the locker rooms and bathrooms at Oasis Valley, invisible to the wealthy members she served. When the call came that morning asking her to participate in something important, something that might change Oasis Valley forever, she had agreed immediately. A young assistant brought her tea. "Ms. Williams, Mr. Phillips will be with you shortly to brief you on this evening's event." Elaine nodded, her aged hands still strong despite decades of harsh cleaning chemicals. "I still can't believe little Willie Johnson grew up to be such an important man," she murmured. "Used to see him carrying those heavy golf bags, studying his school books during breaks. The members treated him like dirt, but he never broke." The assistant smiled. "Mr. Johnson speaks very highly of you, ma'am." "Does he now?" Elaine looked pleased. "Well, I always did slip him extra food from the kitchen when the managers weren't looking. Boy was too skinny, working too hard." As the final preparations continued around her, Elaine sat with her memories, a living connection to William's past. The same past that had shaped his resolve and fueled the remarkable plan now unfolding. Back in the conference room, Marcus ended the meeting with a final instruction. "Remember, this isn't about humiliation or revenge. Mr. Johnson is clear about that. This is about transformation, lasting, meaningful change. Keep that perspective in everything you do tonight." The team nodded in understanding. They'd all worked with William Johnson long enough to know that beneath his business success lay a deeper mission, opening doors that had been closed to him and countless others like him. Tonight was the culmination of that lifelong goal. As they dispersed to their various assignments, Marcus made one final call to the transportation team. "The cars need to arrive simultaneously. Maximum impact. Mr. Johnson will be in the third vehicle." The stage was set. In just a few hours, Oasis Valley Country Club would receive an unexpected education in equality, dignity, and long overdue justice. Exactly 6 hours after being escorted from Oasis Valley's grounds, William Johnson stood in a small park across from the club's entrance. The afternoon had shifted toward evening, casting long shadows across the manicured landscape. He had changed from his casual clothes into a simple but impeccably tailored charcoal suit. No flashy accessories, no designer labels, nothing to suggest his immense wealth except the perfect fit and subtle quality of the fabric. Marcus approached, handing him a folder. "Everything's in place. The team is ready when you are." William nodded, leafing through the documents one last time. "And Ms. Williams?" Waiting in the second car, nervous but ready. "She's brave to do this," William commented. "Make sure she's comfortable." "Already taken care of?" Marcus assured him. "Sir, one last question. Are you sure about not pressing charges against the police officers? The footage clearly shows excessive force and racial profiling." William looked thoughtful. Those officers were following a playbook they've been taught. Yes, they made choices, poor ones. But real change doesn't come from punishing individuals within a broken system. It comes from changing the system itself. Marcus nodded in understanding. The cars are approaching now. 5 identical black limousines appeared at the hill's crest, moving in perfect formation towards the club entrance. As they drew closer, William straightened his tie. "Remarkable how a change of clothes and context can transform how people see you," he observed. "This morning, I was invisible or threatening. Tonight, I'll be powerful." "Their mistake, either way," Marcus replied. "They never saw you, just the color of your skin and the number of years you've lived." William's expression revealed nothing, but his eyes, sharp and determined, suggested the weight of this moment. "Let's proceed." The limousines pulled up simultaneously to Oasis Valley's entrance, creating an impressive display of coordinated arrival. Club valets rushed forward, uncertain which vehicle to attend to first. From his position across the street, William watched the momentary confusion before nodding to Marcus. "Time to make our entrance." They crossed the street together, approaching as the car doors opened in sequence. From the first vehicle emerged William's legal team, 3 prestigious attorneys carrying briefcases and tablets. From the second stepped Elaine Williams, now dressed in a simple but elegant blue dress, supported by a young assistant. The third car, positioned center in the formation, awaited William himself. The club entrance had grown busy with curious onlookers, staff and members drawn by the unusual arrival. Among them stood Gerald Parker, the manager who had humiliated William hours before, looking increasingly concerned as the procession unfolded. When William appeared, walking unhurriedly toward the club entrance, a ripple of recognition passed through the gathered crowd. The security guards who had escorted him out exchanged alarmed glances. Parker's face drained of color. "Mr. Johnson," Parker stammered, stepping forward. We didn't expect to see you back so soon." "Clearly," William replied, his voice calm but carrying enough authority to silence the murmurs around them. "I believe we have unfinished business, Mr. Parker." From the 4th and 5th cars emerged additional members of William's team, executives, security personnel, and a video crew documenting everything. The display of power was unmistakable, yet deliberately restrained. Parker's eyes darted between the imposing group, clearly calculating his next move. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office," he suggested, attempting to regain control of the situation. "That would be appropriate," William agreed. "However, I'll need the entire management team and board present." "The board?" Parker's voice rose an octave. "Mr. Johnson, they're not available on such short notice." "I believe they'll make themselves available," William stated, "given the circumstances." Marcus stepped forward, handing Parker a document. "You might want to review this before proceeding." Parker scanned the paper, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. This can't be real." "I assure you it is," William confirmed. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, Oasis Valley Country Club is owned by Johnson Holdings, my company." A gasp rippled through the gathering crowd. Several members pulled out phones, frantically making calls or searching for information online. The security guards who had manhandled William hours earlier now stood frozen, uncertain of their position. "If you'll excuse us," William continued smoothly, "we have a board meeting to convene. I believe the main conference room will suffice." Without waiting for a response, William walked past Parker into the club, followed by his team. His gait was unhurried but purposeful, showing no sign of the arthritic discomfort that had been more apparent during his morning visit. Power had its own kind of pain management. Members and staff parted before them like water, faces registering shock, confusion, and in some cases, dawning horror as they recognized the elderly black man now walking through the club as its owner. The same man they had stared at, whispered about, and treated with contempt just hours before. William paused momentarily as they passed the restaurant where he had been seated next to the kitchen doors. The maitre d', who had ignored him earlier, now stood rigid with alarm. "The service was lacking earlier," William commented mildly. "We'll need to address that." As they proceeded to the conference room, William noticed Elaine Williams taking in the surroundings with a complex expression, part wonder at seeing the exclusive spaces she had never been allowed to enter despite decades of employment there, part satisfaction at the dramatic turn of events. "Are you all right, Ms. Williams?" he asked quietly. She nodded, her dignified face showing the same strength he remembered from his youth. "Never thought I'd see the day," she whispered. "Never thought I'd walk through the front door." The small moment of connection grounded William amid the whirlwind of his plan unfolding. This wasn't just about him or his personal vindication. It was about Elaine and countless others who had been invisible for too long. As they approached the conference room, the club's board members were already arriving, summoned by urgent calls from Parker. Their faces registered shock as William entered. The same elderly black man who had been forcibly removed from the premises was now striding in as their boss. The stage was set. The confrontation William had planned for decades was about to begin. The Oasis Valley boardroom fell silent as William took his position at the head of the long mahogany table. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the faces of 12 board members. All white, mostly male, all visibly uncomfortable. Gerald Parker stood awkwardly to one side, his earlier confidence shattered. "Gentlemen, ladies," William began, his voice measured and calm. "I believe introductions are in order. My name is William Johnson, founder and CEO of Johnson Innovations, and as of this morning, the new owner of Oasis Valley Country Club." He gestured to Marcus, who distributed folders to each board member. "These documents confirm the legal transfer of ownership from the Whitfield Group to Johnson Holdings, a subsidiary of my company." The board president, Thomas Harrington, a silver-haired man in his 70s, leafed through the papers with trembling hands. "This is preposterous. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," William replied. "The negotiations have been ongoing for 6 months, conducted through intermediaries to maintain privacy." "But why?" demanded another board member. "Why would you want to purchase this club?" William smiled slightly. "An excellent question. Perhaps the events of this morning might provide some insight." At his signal, Marcus activated the large screen on the boardroom wall. High-definition video began to play. William entering the club that morning. The suspicious glances, the whispered comments all captured by the tiny camera hidden in his pen. The footage continued, showing every interaction in perfect clarity, the hostess's dismissive tone, the member blocking his path, the woman clutching her purse, the maitre d' deliberately ignoring him. As the video progressed to his interaction with security in Parker's office, several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. When the footage showed the police escorting him out while members took photos and laughed, William paused the playback. "This is how your club treats a 68-year-old black man who expresses interest in membership," he stated simply. "Not because of my behavior, which as you can see was consistently polite and appropriate, but because of assumptions made about me based on my skin color and age." "You were deliberately misleading people with your appearance," Parker interjected, finding his voice. "You were trying to provoke this reaction." "Was I?" William asked mildly. "By wearing comfortable clothes appropriate for my age? By walking with the slight stiffness that comes from arthritis? By having white hair and dark skin? Which of these natural qualities constitutes deliberate misleading?" Parker fell silent, his argument collapsing under scrutiny. "What exactly do you want, Mr. Johnson?" Harrington asked, his tone wary but respectful now. "Obviously, you've made your point." "Have I?" William replied. "I'm not certain that I have." He turned to Elaine Williams, who sat quietly nearby. "Ms. Williams, would you please introduce yourself to the board?" Elaine stood, her hands clasped firmly together to hide their slight trembling. "My name is Elaine Williams. I worked in housekeeping at this club for 23 years, cleaning your locker rooms, your toilets, your messes. I was never promoted, never invited to use any facilities, never even allowed to walk through the front entrance until today. And did you know me, Ms. Williams?" William prompted gently. She nodded. "I knew William when he was just a skinny boy carrying golf bags for members who never bothered to learn his name. He studied medical textbooks during his breaks. I remember, because I used to slip him sandwiches from the kitchen when the managers weren't looking. Everyone said he was wasting his time, that boys like him didn't become doctors. I didn't become a doctor," William acknowledged with a small smile. "Life took me in a different direction." "You became something even rarer," Elaine replied. "A black man who built an empire despite a world that tried to keep you invisible." The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. The connection between William and Elaine, both black seniors who had experienced the club's discrimination from different angles, made their predicament more complex than a simple business acquisition. "Mr. Johnson," Harrington ventured, "while I cannot condone what happened to you today, surely you understand that purchasing an entire club as some sort of revenge plot seems excessive." William's expression remained calm. "Revenge is short-sighted, Mr. Harrington. I'm interested in transformation, legacy." He looked around the table. "I'm dying, you see? Cancer. The doctors give me perhaps 18 months. The unexpected revelation silenced the room completely. At 68, having built what I've built, I'm now concerned with what remains after I'm gone. William continued. Will spaces like this still exclude people who look like me, or will they become places where true merit and character matter more than appearance? He stood, buttoning his jacket with the deliberate movements of a man who had earned his authority through decades of excellence. That transformation begins today, here, with all of you. The boardroom remained silent as William's words hung in the air. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the impeccable grounds of Oasis Valley. The mood inside mirrored the dimming light, somber, reflective, and tinged with the uncertainty of approaching darkness. "You mentioned transformation," Thomas Harrington finally said, breaking the silence. "What exactly does that mean for the club? For its members?" William walked to the window, gazing out at the golf course where he had once carried bags as a teenager. "That depends largely on you," he replied, "on your willingness to acknowledge the truth and participate in meaningful change." "What truth?" another board member asked defensively. "That you orchestrated a situation to make us look bad?" William turned, his expression calm but resolute. The truth that this club, like many exclusive spaces in America, was designed and has been maintained as a white sanctuary, a place where wealth alone isn't enough for entry if it comes with the wrong skin color. "That's not fair," a female board member protested. "We have several black members." 3, to be precise, Marcus interjected, out of 478 total memberships. All 3 are professional athletes, and all 3 were admitted within the last 5 years, after public pressure about diversity in private clubs. "And how many members over 65? William asked. 78, Marcus answered. "All admitted when they were younger. No new members over 60 have been approved in the last decade." The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances as the data exposed patterns they had never been forced to confront directly. "We follow a standard application process," Harrington insisted. "If certain demographics aren't represented, it's because they don't apply, not because we exclude them." William smiled sadly. "When a black person inquires about membership and is treated as I was this morning, do you think they proceed to formal application? When elderly visitors receive condescending comments about senior centers across town, do you think they feel welcome to continue the process?" A younger board member, Jessica Tanner, spoke up hesitantly. "What happened to you was inexcusable, Mr. Johnson. But is it fair to judge the entire club based on the actions of a few staff members?" "A fair question," William acknowledged. "Perhaps we should expand our evidence." He nodded to Marcus, who advanced the video presentation. New footage began playing, not from that morning, but from dozens of visits over the past year. Black visitors being scrutinized at the entrance while white guests walked in unquestioned. Elderly patrons receiving less attentive service. Subtle but consistent patterns of differential treatment based on race, age, and perceived status. "We've been documenting these interactions for months," William explained. "Not just at Oasis Valley, but at exclusive clubs across the country. The patterns are remarkably consistent." Gerald Parker, who had remained silent, suddenly burst out, "This is entrapment. You've been planning this, setting us up." William turned to him calmly. "Is it entrapment to simply walk into a space as your authentic self and record what happens? We didn't create the discrimination, Mr. Parker. We merely documented it." "What do you want from us?" Harrington asked again, his tone resigned. "Money? A public apology?" "Neither," William replied. "I want partnership in creating lasting change, not just symbolic gestures or diversity initiatives that fade once the spotlight moves on." He returned to his seat at the head of the table, opening a folder of his own. "I've prepared a proposal, a comprehensive plan to transform Oasis Valley from an exclusionary space to a model of inclusive excellence." As he began outlining the plan, several board members listened with growing interest. Others remained skeptical, arms crossed defensively. The division in the room was palpable. This would fundamentally change the character of the club. One member objected. "Yes," William agreed simply. "That's precisely the point." Jessica Tanner leaned forward. "I'd like to hear more about the mentorship program you mentioned. It actually aligns with some ideas I've been trying to propose for years." As the discussion continued, alliances began to shift. Some board members recognized the opportunity to be part of meaningful change. Others resisted, clinging to tradition and exclusivity. Through it all, William remained patient but firm, neither angry nor vindictive despite the morning's humiliation. His focus remained fixed on the future, on the legacy he hoped to leave in the limited time he had remaining. From her seat along the wall, Elaine Williams watched with quiet pride. The skinny boy who had studied medical textbooks between carrying golf bags had grown into this, a man who could face his oppressors with dignity and offer them redemption rather than retribution. As evening fully descended outside, the boardroom lights created a bubble of intensity within the club. In this liminal space, separated from the normal rhythms of privilege and exclusion, something new was taking shape. Painful, challenging, but potentially transformative. "We'll need to adjourn for tonight," William finally said, noting the late hour. "I suggest you all review these materials carefully. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning to continue the discussion and make decisions about moving forward." As the board members gathered their things, their usual confidence had been replaced by contemplative uncertainty. They filed out quietly, nodding respectfully to William as they passed, a stark contrast to how he had been treated that morning. When only William, Marcus, and Elaine remained, Marcus asked quietly, "Do you think they'll come around?" William watched the last board members disappear down the hallway. "Some will, others won't. Transformation is never universal or without resistance." He turned to Elaine with a gentle smile. "Are you ready for dinner, Ms. Williams? I believe we've earned it." "Dinner? Here?" She looked simultaneously thrilled and terrified at the prospect. "Yes, here," William confirmed. "At the best table in the restaurant. The one by the window that's always reserved for special guests." Together, they walked toward the club's prestigious dining room. An elderly black woman who had cleaned its floors for decades and an elderly black man who now owned it, both finally visible in a space that had long pretended they didn't exist. Morning light streamed through the windows of Oasis Valley's guest suite, where William had spent the night. Rather than returning home, he had chosen to stay on the premises, a symbolic reclaiming of space. He stood at the window, watching early risers begin their golf rounds. His phone had been buzzing consistently since dawn. News of the ownership change had leaked, and media inquiries were pouring in. Social media was already ablaze with snippets of information, much of it speculative. Marcus entered after a brief knock, carrying coffee. "Good morning. Quite a storm brewing out there." He handed William a tablet displaying headlines. "Tech Billionaire Acquires Elite Club After Racial Incident." "William Johnson's Power Move Buys Club That Ejected Him." "Discrimination Leads to Takeover at Oasis Valley." William scrolled through the articles with minimal reaction. "I expected this. How's the staff responding?" "Mixed," Marcus reported. "Some are terrified about their jobs, especially those involved in yesterday's incident. Others seem cautiously optimistic about the changes. The kitchen staff and maintenance crew are particularly energized. They've never had an owner who looked like them." William nodded thoughtfully. "And the board members?" "Most will attend this morning's meeting. 2 have resigned in protest. 3 more called to express support for your vision." "Better than I expected," William admitted, sipping his coffee. A soft knock interrupted them. Marcus opened the door to find Jessica Tanner, the younger board member who had shown interest in William's mentorship proposal. "Mr. Johnson, do you have a moment?" she asked hesitantly. William gestured for her to enter. "Of course, Ms. Tanner." She stepped in, clutching a folder. "I've been up all night reviewing your proposal and expanding on some of the ideas. I think there's real potential here, especially in the youth outreach components." William indicated for her to sit. "I'd like to hear your thoughts." As Jessica outlined her suggestions, William listened intently. Her passion for creating pathways for underrepresented youth was genuine. Though perhaps previously misdirected or suppressed within the club's traditional power structures. "Why did you join this board, Ms. Tanner?" William asked when she finished. "You seem to have values that don't align with their historical approach." She looked down momentarily. My father was a longtime member. When he died, taking his place felt like honoring his memory. I thought I could gradually influence change from within. She laughed softly. I've been trying for 3 years with minimal success. Until now. Their conversation was interrupted by another knock. Gerald Parker stood in the doorway, his expression tense but composed. "The board is assembling in the conference room," he announced formally. "Thank you, Mr. Parker," William replied. "We'll be along shortly." After Parker departed, William turned to Jessica. "Change from within requires allies. Are you prepared to be mine, even if it means challenging your colleagues directly?" She nodded without hesitation. Yesterday changed everything. Watching that footage, I can't unsee it or pretend it doesn't matter. "Good," William said, standing. "Then let's continue the work we began yesterday." The boardroom had a different energy than the previous evening. Several members sat straighter, made direct eye contact. Their resistance hardened overnight. Others appeared more thoughtful, some even eager to engage. The division that had begun to form was now clearly defined. William took his place at the head of the table once more. "Before we continue our discussion of the transformation plan, I believe we should address the media situation. By now, you're all aware that news of yesterday's events and the change in ownership has become public." Thomas Harrington frowned. "Did you leak this to the press?" "No," William replied truthfully. "In an institution this size, with this many employees and members, information inevitably spreads. However, how we respond to the attention is within our control." "And how do you suggest we respond?" Harrington asked warily. "With honesty," William said simply. "Acknowledge what happened, take responsibility, and commit publicly to the changes we're discussing." "That would be devastating to the club's reputation," one member protested. William leaned forward slightly. "The club's reputation is already at stake. The choice now is whether that reputation crumbles under exposed wrongdoing or transforms through transparent accountability." As the debate intensified, a commotion outside the boardroom drew their attention. Through the glass walls, they could see staff members gathering in the hallway, their expressions anxious and uncertain. William stood. "It seems our discussion has a wider audience than intended." He walked to the door and opened it. "Would you like to join us?" he asked the assembled staff. "Since this concerns your workplace and livelihoods as well." The staff members exchanged surprised glances. Never before had they been invited into a board meeting. After a moment's hesitation, they filed in quietly, standing along the walls of the large room. Among them, William noticed the maitre d' who had ignored him, the security guards who had escorted him out, and several servers and maintenance workers who had witnessed his humiliation. "Yesterday morning," William began, addressing everyone present, "I experienced firsthand how this club treats people based on appearance rather than character. It wasn't an isolated incident, but a reflection of deeper patterns." He looked around the room, meeting eyes both hostile and hopeful. "Today, we have an opportunity to acknowledge those patterns and commit to changing them. Not through punishment or public shaming, but through honest examination and collective growth." A kitchen worker raised her hand tentatively. William nodded for her to speak. "Will we lose our jobs?" she asked, voicing the fear uppermost in many minds. "No," William assured her. "This transformation isn't about dismissal, but about education and improvement. Everyone willing to participate in creating a more inclusive environment will have a place here." The relief in the room was palpable. As staff and board members alike began to realize that William's approach wasn't vengeful, the atmosphere shifted subtly toward cautious openness. For the next hour, William led a remarkable conversation, one that included voices from throughout the club's hierarchy, from groundskeepers to board members. Old grievances surfaced, uncomfortable truths were spoken, defensive responses gave way to reluctant acknowledgments. It wasn't harmony, but it was honest. It wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. And through it all, William guided the discussion with the patience and wisdom of someone who understood that true transformation required both firmness and compassion. When they finally broke for lunch, the initial fault lines had begun to blur. New alliances were forming across previous boundaries. The path forward remained challenging, but it had become possible in a way it hadn't been 24 hours earlier. As the room cleared, Thomas Harrington approached William quietly. "You could have destroyed us," he acknowledged. "Instead, you're offering redemption we haven't earned." William considered the older white man thoughtfully. "Destruction is easy, Mr. Harrington. Redemption is harder, but infinitely more valuable." "Why?" Harrington asked simply. "After how you were treated. After a lifetime of similar treatment, I imagine." William glanced out the window at the sprawling club grounds. "Because I'm running out of time to leave something better behind than what I found." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Oasis Valley as William walked the grounds with Marcus, discussing implementation details for the transformation plan. The morning's expanded meeting had been productive, with most participants cautiously committing to the proposed changes. Though resistance remained, particularly from a few entrenched board members, momentum was building toward meaningful reform. As they passed the clubhouse restaurant, the executive chef emerged, still wearing his white coat and toque. David Mercer was renowned in culinary circles, his presence at Oasis Valley a point of pride for the club. At 45, his career had been built on exclusive establishments catering to wealthy clientele. "Mr. Johnson," Chef Mercer called out, his voice carrying a nervous edge, "may I speak with you?" William paused, studying the man. "Of course, Chef Mercer." Marcus stepped away discreetly as Mercer approached. "Perhaps we could sit," the chef suggested, gesturing to a nearby patio table. Once seated, Mercer struggled visibly with whatever he had come to say. His hands, skilled enough to create culinary masterpieces, fidgeted uncharacteristically with his apron. "I saw what happened yesterday," he finally blurted out. "When you first arrived at the club, I was watching from the kitchen window." William waited silently, giving the man space to continue. "I saw how they treated you. The comments, the looks, the way Parker handled the situation." Mercer's voice grew quieter. "And I did nothing." The admission hung between them in the warm afternoon air. "I've been thinking about it all night," Mercer continued, "about why I stayed silent, about how many times I've stayed silent before when members or staff made comments about those people or dismissed older guests as irrelevant." William leaned forward slightly. "And what conclusions did you reach, Chef Mercer?" The chef met his gaze directly for the first time. "That I've been a coward. That I've prioritized my prestigious position over basic human decency. That I've been complicit in maintaining the very exclusivity that would have kept me out of this place if I weren't white." He swallowed hard. "I'm 45 years old, Mr. Johnson. Not even close to your age, and I've never had to face the racial barriers you have. Yet I didn't have the courage to do what you did at 68. Stand up against obvious wrongdoing." William nodded, acknowledging the painful self-recognition in the chef's words. "I wanted to apologize," Mercer said. "Not just for yesterday, but for 10 years of silence in this kitchen. For enforcing hierarchies where white guests got the best cuts, the freshest ingredients, while..." He paused. "While people like Ms. Williams ate leftovers in back rooms if they ate here at all. Apology is a beginning," William replied. "What matters more is what follows." Mercer straightened his shoulders. "I've spent the morning developing a new program for the restaurant, a culinary apprenticeship specifically for young people from underrepresented communities, professional kitchen training, mentorship, college scholarships for those who complete the program." He slid a folder across the table. Detailed plans for implementation, budgets, timelines, curriculum. "With your permission, I'd like to begin immediately." William leafed through the proposal, impressed by its thoroughness. "You developed this overnight?" Mercer nodded. "I haven't slept. It felt more important than rest. This aligns perfectly with our larger transformation goals," William observed. "There's one more thing," Mercer added hesitantly. "I'd like to offer a special dinner tonight for Ms. Williams and any staff members who, like her, have never been allowed to dine in the main restaurant during their years of service here." William studied the chef, seeing genuine remorse and commitment in his expression. "That's an excellent idea, Chef Mercer, but it should be more than symbolic. These employees should know they're welcome in the dining room any time." "Absolutely," Mercer agreed quickly. That's part of the new policy I've already discussed with my staff, but tonight would be special. A formal recognition of their contributions and our failure to acknowledge them properly before now. And as they finished their conversation, William noticed a small gathering of club members watching from a distance, their expressions a mix of curiosity, concern, and, in some cases, outright hostility. The transformation of Oasis Valley was being observed with intense interest by those with the most to lose from changing the status quo. "You should know," William said quietly to Mercer, "that taking this position may cost you relationships with some influential members." The chef glanced toward the watching group and nodded. "I'm prepared for that. Some things matter more than prestige or connections." William stood, extending his hand. "In that case, Chef Mercer, I look forward to tonight's dinner and to seeing your apprenticeship program flourish." As Mercer returned to his kitchen, Marcus rejoined William. "Another ally?" he asked. "Yes," William confirmed, "and a significant one. Cultural change requires champions at all levels." They continued their walk across the grounds, discussing next steps and addressing questions from curious staff members they encountered. The club's atmosphere had shifted noticeably since morning. Less tension, more engagement, a cautious optimism threading through interactions that had previously been coldly hierarchical. Near the tennis courts, they encountered Judge Richard Wilson, the same judge who had signed the police order to remove William the previous day. Now, informed of William's true identity and position, the judge approached with poorly concealed anxiety. "Mr. Johnson," he began stiffly, "I feel I should explain yesterday's misunderstanding." William regarded him steadily. "I'm not sure what needs explanation, Judge Wilson. Your signature is on an order authorizing police to remove a suspicious elderly black male from private property based on claims that have since been proven false." The judge's face reddened. "I was acting on information provided by trusted sources. If I had known who you were, if you had known I was wealthy and powerful, you would have treated me differently," William finished for him. "That's precisely the problem." "That's not what I meant," the judge protested weakly. "Isn't it?" William asked quietly. "Tell me, Judge Wilson, how many orders have you signed over your career authorizing police action against people who look like me, without questioning the trusted sources or considering alternative interpretations of events?" The judge fell silent, his legal training insufficient for this unexpected cross-examination. "I have no interest in pursuing legal action against you, if that's your concern," William assured him. "But I do hope you'll reflect on how quickly you authorized force against an elderly man whose only crime was being black in an exclusive space." As Judge Wilson retreated, visibly shaken, Marcus commented, "That was generous. The legal team says we have grounds for a significant lawsuit." William shook his head. "Lawsuits punish past behavior. I'm more interested in changing future behavior. That conversation will do more to affect his judicial decisions going forward than any legal penalty could." They completed their circuit of the grounds as sunset approached, the fading light casting a golden glow across Oasis Valley. In just 24 hours, the exclusive sanctuary had been fundamentally disrupted. Old certainties had been questioned, hidden prejudices exposed, new possibilities imagined. And it was only the beginning. The Oasis Valley dining room had been transformed for the evening. Usually arranged in formal isolation, the tables had been reconfigured into a single long arrangement that stretched the length of the elegant space. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths, fine china, and polished silver. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples over the golf course. At precisely 7 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. Not the usual wealthy members in designer attire, but the club's service staff, maintenance workers, and housekeeping personnel. Men and women who had spent decades working at Oasis Valley but had never been served in its prestigious restaurant. Many arrived tentatively, dressed in their best clothes but clearly uncomfortable in this unfamiliar role. Some had brought spouses or grown children, all equally uncertain about whether they truly belonged in this space. Elaine Williams stood near the entrance, elegantly dressed in a royal blue outfit that Marcus had arranged for her, greeting her former colleagues with dignity and warmth. William watched from a distance, allowing this moment to unfold without his direct involvement. This dinner was not about him or his vision, but about recognition long overdue for people who had been rendered invisible within these walls. Chef Mercer personally greeted each arrival, escorting them to their places with the same deference he typically showed to the club's wealthiest patrons. His entire kitchen staff worked in coordinated precision, determined to make this the most memorable meal they had ever created. As the room filled, an extraordinary energy developed, the nervous tension giving way to genuine pleasure, hesitant smiles broadening into laughter, initial whispers growing into confident conversation. These were people who had known each other for years, sometimes decades, but had never shared a meal as equals in this setting. William took his place near the center of the table, between Elaine and an elderly groundskeeper who had maintained the golf course for 42 years. Across from them sat Jessica Tanner, representing the board, and Chef Mercer, who had stepped out of the kitchen to participate directly in the meal he had conceived. As servers, volunteers from the administrative staff who had wanted to participate in the role reversal poured wine and water, William rose to offer a brief welcome. "Tonight is about recognition," he said simply. "Recognition of your contributions to Oasis Valley over many years. Recognition of your dignity and worth as human beings regardless of position or title. And recognition that institutions can change when we have the courage to see each other truly." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings, built on proper appreciation of the past." The meal that followed was extraordinary. 7 courses of Chef Mercer's finest creations, each presented with artistic precision and explained in detail by the kitchen staff. For many guests, it was their first experience of fine dining, made more meaningful by being served in a place where they had long served others. Conversations flowed naturally as the evening progressed. Elaine shared stories of her early days at the club in the 1970s, when segregation's shadow still darkened daily interactions. The groundskeeper described watching generations of wealthy children grow up on the courses he maintained, never speaking directly to him despite seeing him daily for years. A dishwasher in his 20s, the youngest staff member present, spoke passionately about his dreams of college and a career in environmental science. When Jessica Tanner mentioned the scholarship program being developed as part of William's transformation plan, the young man's eyes lit with new possibility. William observed it all, speaking little but listening intently. This was the heart of his vision, not just policy changes or diversity initiatives, but fundamental shifts in human connection across boundaries that had seemed impermeable. Midway through the evening, an unexpected interruption occurred. A group of club members led by Robert Chambers, one of the most vocal opponents of William's plans, entered the dining room unannounced. They stopped short at the sight before them, their exclusive sanctuary filled with the people who had always served them, now being served themselves. "What is the meaning of this?" Chambers demanded loudly. "The dining room is closed for a private function. Who authorized this?" The room fell silent, the momentary joy threatened by this intrusion of old hierarchies. William stood calmly. "I authorized it, Mr. Chambers. As the club's owner, that's my prerogative." "This is outrageous," Chambers continued, gesturing expansively at the gathered staff. "These people don't belong here." The words hung in the air, their ugliness exposed by being spoken aloud rather than merely implied through policy and practice. Before William could respond, Elaine Williams rose to her full height, her dignity undiminished by age. "I've cleaned your messes for 23 years, Mr. Chambers. Picked up your discarded towels, emptied your trash, scrubbed your toilets. I've been in this building more hours than you have, given more years to it than you have. If anyone belongs here, I do." Her quiet statement silenced Chambers momentarily. Other staff members straightened in their chairs, drawing strength from her example. "The world is changing, Robert," Jessica Tanner added. "Oasis Valley needs to change with it. I'd invite you to join us, to be part of something better than what we've been, but that requires letting go of the idea that some people belong and others don't." Chambers looked around the room, recognizing his isolation even among the few members who had accompanied him. The moral ground had shifted beneath his feet, leaving him stranded in an outdated paradigm that suddenly appeared small and mean-spirited in the warm light of the transformed dining room. "This isn't over," he muttered, but the threat sounded hollow even to his own ears. He turned and left, followed by his increasingly embarrassed companions. After they departed, a brief silence hung over the gathering. Then the young dishwasher spoke up. "Can we have dessert now? I've been looking forward to it all night." The tension broke as laughter rippled through the room. Chef Mercer signaled the servers, and the evening continued with renewed warmth and solidarity. As William watched the interactions around him, he felt a profound sense of rightness. Not vindication for yesterday's humiliation, but confirmation that his vision for transformation was not merely possible, but already beginning to take root. The cancer might limit his remaining time, but moments like this, moments of genuine human connection across boundaries of race, age, and status, would echo beyond his lifetime. What was happening in this dining room wasn't just about Oasis Valley. It was a microcosm of the broader social changes he hoped to catalyze through his legacy projects. As the evening drew to a close, staff members who had entered nervously hours earlier departed with straight backs and raised heads, their sense of belonging fundamentally altered. They had been invited to the table, literally and figuratively, and that invitation could not be rescinded, regardless of Robert Chambers or others who might resist the change. William remained seated as the room gradually emptied, contemplating the day's events. In just 24 hours, seismic shifts had occurred within Oasis Valley's culture. Not complete transformation, that would require sustained effort over time, but the essential first steps toward a new reality. Marcus approached as the last guests departed. "Successful evening?" William nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "More than successful. Necessary. Robert Chambers is already contacting attorneys, looking for ways to challenge the acquisition," Marcus reported. "Let him try," William replied, unconcerned. "The legal work is impeccable, as you know. And the transformation plan. How soon do you want to implement the next phase?" William gazed out at the darkened golf course, contemplating. "We begin tomorrow. There's no time to waste." Morning mist hung over Oasis Valley, lending the landscape an ethereal quality as members began to arrive for their regular activities. News of the ownership change and the unusual dinner had spread through the community overnight, and curiosity drew people to the club in unusual numbers. In the main lobby, where portraits of previous club presidents, all white men, had hung for decades, a work crew was carefully removing the frames. In their place, a single large photograph was being installed. An elderly black woman in a simple blue dress, her expression dignified and serene. Elaine Williams looked down upon the gathered onlookers, her presence commanding in a space where she had previously been invisible. Below the portrait, a bronze plaque bore a simple inscription: "In honor of those whose labor built this club, but whose humanity was unseen. The foundation of true excellence is dignity for all." William stood quietly to one side, observing reactions as members and staff encountered the new installation. Expressions ranged from outrage to uncomfortable recognition to tearful appreciation, each reaction revealing something about the viewer rather than the portrait itself. Thomas Harrington approached, studying the photograph with thoughtful attention. "A powerful statement," he commented. "More than a statement," William corrected gently. "A correction of the historical record." Harrington nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about legacy and the time we have left." He hesitated. "I'm 74, Mr. Johnson. Like you, I'm confronting the limits of mortality." "And what conclusions have you reached?" William asked. "That I've spent too many years protecting institutions that may not deserve protection. That comfort with the familiar isn't justification for excluding the unfamiliar." He gestured toward Elaine's portrait. "That I've walked past people like her for decades without truly seeing them." Before William could respond, commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Robert Chambers had arrived with his attorney and several agitated board members who had aligned with his opposition. Behind them, local news reporters hovered eagerly, sensing controversy. "This ends today, Johnson," Chambers announced loudly, brandishing legal documents. "We've filed an injunction challenging the sale. The transfer wasn't properly authorized under club bylaws." The attorney beside him stepped forward, a thin man with calculating eyes. The previous owner had no authority to sell without board approval. These documents proved the sale was fraudulent. A small crowd had gathered, tension filling the elegant lobby. William appeared unmoved by the confrontation, his expression calm as he studied the opposing group. "May I see these documents?" he asked mildly. The attorney hesitated, then handed over the papers with visible reluctance. William examined them carefully, his years of business experience evident in his methodical review. "Interesting," he finally commented. "These bylaws appear to have been amended recently. The dates suggest changes were made just 3 months ago." "That's irrelevant," Chambers snapped. "They're the governing documents now." A new voice joined the conversation. Elderly, tentative, but determined. Actually, those amendments were never properly ratified. All heads turned to see an elderly white man in a slightly outdated suit making his way through the crowd. Bernard Maxwell had served as the club's legal counsel for over 40 years before retiring 5 years earlier. "Bernard," Chambers sounded genuinely shocked. "What are you doing here?" "Telling the truth, finally," Maxwell replied, his voice growing stronger. "Those bylaw amendments were created specifically to prevent any ownership change that might threaten the club's traditional character. They were backdated and inserted into the official documents without proper procedure." The attorney representing Chambers paled visibly. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Maxwell." "Yes, it is," Maxwell agreed. "One I can prove." He turned to William. "I've brought the original governance documents and meeting minutes. They show conclusively that the board has been manipulating the club's legal structure for years to maintain complete control and," he hesitated, then finished bluntly, "racial exclusivity." A stunned silence fell over the lobby. Several reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Club members exchanged uncomfortable glances, some edging toward the exits. "Why come forward now?" William asked quietly. Maxwell looked up at Elaine's portrait, then back to William. "I'm 82 years old, Mr. Johnson. I've spent over 40 years watching injustice and saying nothing. I justified my silence with professional ethics, with loyalty to tradition." He shook his head slowly. "I don't want to die with that burden still on my conscience." He handed William a thick folder containing the original documents. "The sale to your company was completely legal under the actual bylaws. Mr. Chambers and his faction knew this, which is why they created fraudulent amendments to try to invalidate it." Chambers stepped forward angrily. "You senile old fool! You have no idea what you're talking about." "I have every idea," Maxwell replied with dignity. "I drafted most of these documents myself over the years, including some I'm not proud of. Policies designed specifically to exclude applicants based on race without explicitly saying so." William examined the evidence carefully, then handed it to Marcus. "Please make copies for our legal team and the press," he said quietly. Turning to the gathered crowd, he spoke with measured clarity. "It appears that certain board members have engaged in document fraud to maintain control of this club and its exclusionary practices. The ownership transfer stands. The transformation continues." Chambers' face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This isn't over," he sputtered. "We'll fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary." William regarded him with something resembling compassion. "Why, Mr. Chambers? What are you really fighting for? The right to exclude people based on their skin color or age. Is that truly the legacy you want to leave?" The simplicity of the question seemed to penetrate Chambers' anger, leaving him momentarily speechless. In the silence that followed, Jessica Tanner stepped forward. "I think it's time for an emergency board meeting," she suggested. "One that addresses not just the ownership issue but the apparent fraud committed by some of our own members." As the crowd began to disperse, moving toward the conference room or departing the premises, William remained by Elaine's portrait. The morning's events had unfolded more dramatically than anticipated, yet the outcome aligned with his larger purpose. Bernard Maxwell approached hesitantly. "I should have spoken years ago," he said quietly. "I'm sorry it took so long." "Better late than never," William replied, extending his hand. "Your courage today matters." As they shook hands, two elderly men from opposite sides of a divide that had defined American life for generations, something subtle shifted in the atmosphere of Oasis Valley. Another barrier had fallen, another truth acknowledged, another step taken toward redemption. 1 week later, William Johnson stood on the first tee of Oasis Valley's golf course, surrounded by an unusual gathering. To his right stood 30 teenagers from the surrounding community, diverse in ethnicity, gender, and background, all participants in the newly established mentorship program. To his left stood Elaine Williams and several other longtime club employees, now recognized as honored elders rather than invisible servants. Behind them, a sizable crowd had gathered: board members, club staff, local community leaders, and media representatives, all witnessing the symbolic launch of Oasis Valley's transformation. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning, William addressed the assembled group. The beginning of a new chapter for this institution and, perhaps, a model for similar spaces across our nation. The changes initiated over the past week had been swift and comprehensive. Robert Chambers and 2 other board members had resigned following the exposure of their document fraud. Thomas Harrington had stepped down as board president, nominating Jessica Tanner as his replacement, the youngest and first female president in the club's history. The mentorship program, combining educational opportunities with access to the club's facilities, had received over 200 applications in its first 3 days. Chef Mercer's Culinary Apprenticeship Initiative had secured funding for its first 5 years, with several prestigious restaurants offering to expand the program to their own kitchens. Most significantly, the club's membership policies had been completely rewritten, eliminating barriers based on race, age, or background while maintaining standards of excellence and commitment to community service. "I'd like to invite Elaine Williams to hit the ceremonial first drive," William announced, handing her a gleaming driver crafted specifically for her height and strength. Elaine stepped forward nervously, having never held a golf club in all her years at Oasis Valley. A young professional golfer, volunteering with the mentorship program, helped position her hands correctly and explained the basic swing mechanics. With remarkable natural ability for a first-time golfer of 65, Elaine connected solidly with the ball, sending it flying straight down the fairway amid cheers and applause. Her face glowed with pride and joy, emotions rarely associated with Oasis Valley in its previous incarnation. After the ceremonial opening, William stepped away from the crowd, finding a quiet moment alone near the 18th green. His phone buzzed with a message from his oncologist, confirming tomorrow's treatment appointment. The cancer continued its inexorable progress, but William felt a profound peace that transcended his physical condition. Marcus joined him, respecting his solitude for a moment before speaking. The board unanimously approved the final phase of the transformation plan this morning. The scholarship fund is fully established, and the community access program begins next month. William nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "And how are the former opponents responding?" "Most have come around, seeing the benefits already emerging," Marcus reported. "A few remain resistant but powerless to stop the changes." Chambers has gone conspicuously silent since the fraud evidence became public. They watched as the teenagers from the mentorship program spread out across the driving range, receiving instruction from club professionals who had volunteered their expertise. Among them moved Elaine and other senior staff members, sharing stories and building connections across generations that had previously existed in separate worlds. "When I was diagnosed last year," William said quietly, "I feared I wouldn't have time to create meaningful change, that my wealth and influence would ultimately mean little against entrenched systems of exclusion. And now?" Marcus asked. William gestured toward the vibrant scene before them. "Now I see that transformation is possible, even within the most resistant institutions. It requires courage, strategy, and perhaps most importantly, offering people a path to redemption rather than mere punishment." In the distance, Thomas Harrington was showing a young black girl how to hold a putter, his previous reserve replaced by genuine engagement. Chef Mercer had set up a refreshment station where he personally served snacks to community members who had never before set foot on the grounds. Jessica Tanner moved confidently among various groups, her leadership already taking shape in small but significant ways. "The true test will come after I'm gone," William observed, "whether these changes endure beyond my lifetime." "They will," Marcus assured him. "You've created something self-sustaining. Changes in policy supported by changes in hearts and minds. That's far more durable than anything imposed by authority alone." A young teenager approached hesitantly, recognition dawning on his face as he realized who William was. "Mr. Johnson, I just wanted to say thank you. My grandmother worked here for 30 years and never thought I'd be allowed to play on this course." William smiled warmly. "What's your name, young man?" "Darius, sir. Darius Williams." He gestured toward Elaine. "That's my grandmother over there." "Elaine is your grandmother?" William's expression brightened. "She's a remarkable woman. She says you knew each other when you were young, that you used to carry golf bags here." William nodded. "That's true. Life comes full circle sometimes, Darius. Remember that. The place where you start isn't necessarily where you finish." The boy grinned. "Yes, sir. I want to study computer science like you did. Maybe start my own company someday." "I believe you will," William replied, seeing in the young man's eyes the same determination he had felt decades ago. "And when you do, remember to create spaces where everyone belongs." As Darius rejoined his grandmother, William and Marcus continued their walk around the perimeter of the course. The spring air carried the scent of fresh grass and new possibilities. In just over 24 hours, William had transformed Oasis Valley from a symbol of exclusion to a model of inclusion. More importantly, he had created the conditions for that transformation to continue evolving long after he was gone. "We should head back," Marcus suggested gently. "You have treatment tomorrow." William nodded, taking one last look at the scene before him. The diverse gathering on grounds that had been deliberately exclusive for generations. The new connections forming, the barriers dissolving. In the face of mortality, he had created something immortal, a living legacy of change. "It's enough," he said quietly, more to himself than to Marcus. "It's enough." Together, they walked back toward the clubhouse, where Elaine's portrait now greeted all who entered, a permanent reminder that true excellence begins with recognizing the dignity in every human being, regardless of appearance, age, or station in life. The transformation of Oasis Valley was far from complete. Such deep change requires time, commitment, and ongoing vigilance. But in the space of a single day, the journey from humiliation to lasting change had begun, with one elderly black man's courage to confront exclusion with dignity rather than bitterness, to offer redemption rather than revenge, to create something new rather than simply destroying the old. As William took his place among the diverse gathering now continuing their celebration on the clubhouse terrace, he felt the satisfaction of seeds well planted, regardless of whether he would live to see them fully bloom.